Good morning, Illini. I'm Matt Schrock, your host, and welcome back to another Healthy Illini podcast. Today, I'm joined by 4 guests, and this episode will be so full, we're going to need 2 installments, actually. So I want to give them plenty of time to share their thoughts, and so we're going to get started right now. Today, all 4 of my guests are affiliated with Beckwith Residential Support Services, an ancillary program of the Division of Disability Resources and Educational Services, or DRES, if you've ever heard that on campus. I have with me Paige Lewis. She's the Associate Director at Beckwith. Katie Hoyer, a Visiting Disability Advisor. Michael Van Wagner and Maddie Thomas, and they're both interns. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Real quick to start, Paige, could you just give me a real quick blurb for anybody who might be listening and doesn't know, what is Beckwith Residential Support Services?
Sure, great, thank you. Beckwith, we're here to provide services for students with significant physical disabilities so that they can live and be a college student like everybody else.
There's a lot of support offices on campus that students may not be aware of, because a lot of times when we think college, we think academics. It's just what it is. But there's a whole area under student affairs that help out. McKinley is one, Beckwith is one, DRES is a part of that as well. There's a lot of offices, and so I really wanted to give an opportunity to highlight some things. There's some experiences that you have all had, and your experiences with Beckwith as well as on campus in general. So starting off, we're talking about finding your voice. That's really what our focus is here. And coming to college is a huge transition for so many students. For a lot, it's a first time you're on your own and you don't have someone else making a majority of your decisions. They're not telling you what to do. You have opportunities to express yourself and to make decisions for yourself. It's a time to discover who you are, and that's what finding your voice is about, but it's not an easy process. So in all of your experiences, why is this time, college students, why is that time such a vital time period for young adults in that regard?
I think it's vital just because college is the time where students are learning not only how to find your voice, but you're having so many opportunities and there's so many resources at your fingertips to actually figure out who you are. And that's an essential piece of finding your voice, to figure out first who a student is or who a person is. You have to know who you are, and so you have to have a lot of resources available to tap into that can help you discover parts of yourself that you didn't know about. And also, for many students, they're away from home, so they don't have those same familial influences, perhaps, that they had while at home. So they really get to do a lot on their own.
One of the things that makes it tough coming to college is that you go from a fairly structured environment to a less structured environment, and you're talking about resources. There's so many, it can be overwhelming. Mm-hmm. As you transition, what is some of the challenges in trying to find your voice?
Well, for me, it was really trying to figure out who I am first before I even learned what it means to say something. I really didn't understand what legs I had to stand on when it came to contributing to in an academic sense, or even personally. I really didn't understand who I was, and so it was difficult to understand what I wanted to say, if that makes any sense. I know that was a little bit long-winded, but it's the first time where you're really exposed to all of the world, I guess. It's the first time you've really been able to separate yourself from the familial context that you've grown up in, and you really have to make decisions for yourself. And with that comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of self-reflection that sometimes not a lot of students are ready for. So for me, one of the biggest challenges was simply, who am I? Why am I making the decisions that I'm making? Why am I the person that I'm trying to be? Why am I trying to become a better person? Thankfully, I had a lot of support around me and friends that came with me from high school, so it wasn't like I was completely starting over. A lot of students who translocate from across the seas or come from places where not a lot of other students from around them come here as well. So it's just it was really nice to have that support system around me.
You talked about the familial constructs basically that feed into who you are and fed into your environment prior to coming. But there's also parts of your identity that, as students, that are created through your experiences in high school too. Like for a lot of students, I'm the athlete, or I'm the student government person, or I'm music, or I'm whatever. And going to college is another opportunity to explore areas outside of those particular identifiers, or if it's an identifier that you didn't enjoy, that you found yourself kind of being pushed into, or under certain experiences labeled as, you can shed that and become somebody else. But that can also be a daunting thing for a lot of students. And Maddie, I like one thing you put in yours that you talked about, that it's not an easy process. It's not a quick process.
No, it takes time.
It takes time. You want to expand upon that just a little bit?
You have to do a lot of self-reflection, like Mike said. And you really have to think about what you want your future to look like and the person that you want to become, I guess. And, you just can't rush into it, I feel like.
The person you want to become part is what was a struggle for me. I found that my idealized version of my future self changed so quickly from like month 1 of college to the end of year 1 of college to where I am now. I thought I wanted to do something in the realm of political science. Like I entered school as like a student government kid. I did really well in humanities, and I kind of woke up one day during the start of the pandemic, and I had to look at myself and be like, is there a way that I can monetize political science that didn't make me want to hate myself in the future? And I found that the answer was no. I didn't trust the future version of myself that would have to put myself in the political system that we are and be able to make like a stable future for myself. And so I turned to nursing. I turned to something that I knew that every single day when I woke up in the morning, I could tell myself that I'm doing good for people. I'm going to be able to see the impact that I'm making on the world interpersonally right in front of me.
Mike, what was that like when you had that realization that you wanted to change majors or change life paths? Was it scary? Was it vulnerable? Exciting?
Oh, it was terrible. I kind of made it seem like it was like a one-day decision. It took me like 4 months of just not knowing anything about myself to realize that, okay, this is something that I can work towards. This is something that I feel I would be able to comfortably move in the direction of. It definitely was less like a come to Jesus moment, so to speak, and more so like turning the Titanic around.
Matt, you had mentioned, that one thing when students are transitioning from high school or community colleges that, just having that difference of how they were seen, or kind of what circle they roamed in and how that was different. What we talk about, in Beckwith a lot of times, the students are finding their voice and being given a voice for the first time. And so being the popular one that everybody's like sitting around and really listening, it often can be challenging in terms because they're not used to it of what does this mean? That's been interesting and to help them work through.
And it's almost that we see kind of like an identity crisis type thing, because students are so used, like I think just as humans, in my life of social work, right, we're all just used to filling in the idea of wanting to be, like filling roles, I suppose, right? And so in high school, we fill the role of the athlete or of the academic, or of, whatever the case may be, the theater kid, the student government kid, Mike over there, whatever that looks like. And so then you come to college and you're faced with, I don't just have to, and in high school I suppose it didn't happen that way either, but maybe you were more likely to pigeonhole yourself. where in college it's more so, wow, I have so many different avenues that I can explore, and also so many different connections that I'm building with those around me, whether it be my roommates, my dorm mates, my classmates, and back with my personal assistants, that you're finally being able to say things of, there are pieces of my identity that I'm also seeing in others. And I think that connection piece is such a big piece to being able to figure out who you are and what area, when you feel comfortable using your voice, and when you wanting to take that step back to learn about how to use it effectively.
So many of us, I identify as being introverted. And so for me to speak up in class or with anything else, it's like, what do I have to say that anybody's going to want to listen to? Now, granted, once you get to know me, look out. But that's also that journey that we have to try and figure out and realize the more we talk and people start to listen and are engaged, that we feel more comfortable with doing that.
And that's one of the great things. It's a double-edged sword in coming to a college experience where you're coming out of a what you've known to something new, and you have opportunity where you may have come from a place where your voice, whatever that may be, was the only one of that type, that you weren't. It wasn't a common opinion or viewpoint or experience. And so it was difficult to talk about because there was no one else to relate to it. But then you come here and there are people to relate to it, which is wonderful, but it's also scary because what you've known all along is now suddenly different. And that's not easy either. So I say that to say, and we talk about it all the time on this podcast, if you've listened to any other episodes, you've heard this, that everyone is on an individual journey, that there are commonalities across the board, that are common ideas, common experiences to a degree, but the uniqueness of that experience is individualistic. And that's really what finding your voice is about, because I guarantee that the four of you have had common experiences here at some point that you all relate and say, yep, same thing for me, but you all have individual voices, and your experiences are individual to you. So that's really the important part of finding your voice, that while you can align with other people, you can have common experience with those people, you can support one another, your voice is still important. Even though there's a group of people that are just like me, my voice still matters. And that's really what this is about. And for anyone listening, it is really about trying to find your voice within the context of everybody else. So with that, I want to transition just a little bit and really want to give Michael and Maddie a chance here to talk, especially in that part of the reason I want to give space for this today was to allow students to contact us and engage with us, but also allow you to have space to share your personal journey. Whatever finding your voice was. And Michael, you started to talk on it a little bit, but as much or as little as you're comfortable sharing, would you tell us a little bit about what it was like in your experience coming to UIUC and finding your voice, and just some of that journey for yourself?
For me, I felt like I had already come here with a pretty strong voice. I've always had a very supportive family and friends who have always encouraged me to advocate myself for what I need and to speak up if I felt that my needs weren't being met. And so I felt like coming here, I just really had to do research to find the resources that I need. And then I went out and sought those services or spoke up for what I needed, and that helped me to adjust a lot.
I kind of touched on a little bit of my own personal development journey earlier, but I went through so many of the classic college stereotypes. It's not even funny. You kind of alluded to this earlier, Katie, but I actually was a theater kid in high school, and then I became the student government kid my first year here. I was an intern for the student government complex, and I ended up being, I don't know, this title holds no meaning anymore, but I was the youngest director of the Illinois Student Senate ever, because the person who had held the position before me ended up quitting in the middle of it, and I was the only one that had the relevant skills needed to step up and do it. So I did that for a time, and then after my freshman year, I decided to do something different. And so I jumped straight into the frat boy stereotype. So as a sophomore, I did the whole rushing thing. I went to the parties. It was fun, but that was one of those moments where I realized who I didn't want to be, which I think is just as important, especially for students here, to realize that you don't have to keep doing the things that you're doing if you don't like yourself while you're doing them. Sometimes it can be difficult to admit to yourself that this is not who I want to be, this is not the person that I want to become. And it took, honestly, the pandemic, the moment where everything was like ripped away and I was removed from campus to be able to look at myself clearly and be like, this is not sustainable. This is not the person I want to become. And so now I'm kind of transitioning back into this more holistic version of myself where I was able to keep some of the more social elements of that. I was able to reconnect with more of the art passions that I had in high school, and kind of just come into my own as a person.
That's there's more wisdom there than you know, and I'm sitting here on the other side saying that I know people that are long since college who are still learning those lessons, and so that's a wonderful thing, because I really liked what you said, that you learned who you didn't want to be. One thing that I say to anybody I'm talking to, as we're talking about life lessons, whether here or just in my regular life, is that every person you meet, you learn something from. Either I want to be like them and I want to know how they do it, or I don't want to be like them and I don't want to do what they're doing. But every person you meet is an opportunity to learn, and that's a huge thing, that you had an experience and you decided this isn't what I want. And it touches on something that you all talked about, that it's never too late to start. That you're not too deep into something that you can't take a breath and start over. So while we're still talking about personal experiences, I do want to ask Paige, ask you something, because you talked about it a lot in your prep, which I thought was really good. You were talking about how, really, if we're honest, college students who come in don't always have the tools to navigate this finding your voice. The idea that they underestimate the intellectual and social maturity required to transition to these things, and we kind of just throw them in the deep end and say, here you go, when a lot of us aren't equipped for that. I mean, I'm 43 years old and I don't feel equipped for that most days. And so as far as what they've talked about, their personal journey and the things you've seen in working with students, what are your thoughts on that, as far as what it takes for a student to come in and find their own voice if they don't have those tools?
It's the experiences, and so being afforded the opportunities before coming to college to, we talk about successful failures. So, it starts as, potty training really, but learning how to walk, learning how to ride your bike. You fall off, you brush your knees off, you might cry a little bit, and then you get back on again, right? A lot of times students with or without a disability aren't given that same luxury. 9/11, COVID, Combine, all these things now have significantly impacted how much liberty students have before college, because their parents are fearful. I'm 55, so I grew up in a time where I could run around the neighborhood, and just as long as I was home before the sun was down, my parents didn't know where I was. I didn't have a cell phone. There was that trust. The world has changed significantly, and there's not the same opportunities for parents to develop that trust, and for then the students to also develop that they have the ability to do these things. So without that opportunity, they don't have a good sense of self. They don't have that confidence of that living and learning. And so when they don't have that guidance, by their parents or others, they're going to a place that their friends aren't there, then they feel all alone and isolated and don't know who to ask. And so there's so many students who are silently struggling. Academic student affairs, we all know, and we can see the students who are struggling, and try and offer the resources, but yet they just don't feel comfortable to take them.
We talk about imposter syndrome a lot here, and you kind of referenced it. We all talk about it, but not that term, but the idea that they don't know to ask for help, and they see other students who seem to be doing great, and I'm the only one who's struggling. which, is not what I call the Instagram mentality that we see the best image of everybody. We don't see the 18 pictures they took before the one they posted, that kind of thing. And so you see that imposter syndrome, and it is tough to reach out. Michael, I want to come back to you for a second. You talked about how you changed a couple times. Was that difficult? Because you'd made friends in these other realms. Was that difficult to say, this is not who I am anymore? Was it a difficult decision because it might mean changing dynamics in friendships?
Well, for me, there was like a two-tiered kind of mentality. Like there's the people that I kind of allowed myself to be closer to my true self with, and those are the people that I'm still friends with now that kind of had the more real experiences with the more real interconnectivity. And then the other group of people were just kind of like the byproduct of being in those social situations with all the time. It's the person you say hey to because you see them in the house or you see them on the floor of the student government room. But it was never a struggle for me to kind of I suppose transition interpersonally and like change my outward positive face towards these people, because I think the individuals who I truly think of myself as friends with, they were kind of already there. They kind of already saw that true person underneath the masking facade of the social situation that I found myself in, if that made any sense.
It does a lot. We're going to pause here. We are doing a 2-part episode on this, but I do want to say thank you to you all for joining us here. And if you're listening, we'll be coming back with part 2. Be sure to tune in for that part 2 and hear more about what we're going to share here. There are some resources in the bio of this episode. If you want to follow up, if you have questions, by all means, contact us at Healthy Illini, contact us at McKinley, at Beckwith. Let us know what you're thinking, and be sure to tune in the next time to hear the conclusion of this. Thank you for joining us today. You're on a personal journey, no matter where you are in it. You are important, and you matter. Your health and wellness are important and matter, and we are here to keep you well to excel. So go have a great week, Illini. Let us know how you're doing, and we'll catch you next time on Healthy Illini.